Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is Ship Updates. Now, before we get into patch 2.3 and 2.4 and looking ahead, uh, two little pieces of news slipped out in Reverse the Verse, and that is that the Javelin is very close to being finished, and that the Idris, obviously we know that because they're flight testing it right now. So now chances are we're not going to see these two ships before Squadron 42 because it's part of the big reveal and like the oohs and the ahs and all that crap. But I mean, Squadron 42 is supposed to be this year, so chances are, in one form or another, the people who have bought a Javelin or bought an Idris could very well be walking the deck of their ships at some point later this year. So definitely something to look forward to. And, you know, when you look at Squadron 42, I mean, there's been recent comments about, in regards to Pedro Camacho, saying, "Oh, this has to be done by this date. This has to be done by that date." So he thought people were going to be getting the soundtrack within a week or whatnot. So this is all the stuff that's this is part of the process of all the things that are required to be done by a certain date, so that they can go into the physical merchandising and be shipped out to the players. So the fact that they're actually coming up with end dates to get all this stuff together to start shipping it out to players, at least, getting it nailed down to the point that they say, okay, we know we have this now. We know we have that. And we know we have the other thing. I mean, it does look very strong that Squadron 42 is at least going to be this year. So, with all those little bits and pieces, and obviously some speculation on my part, I'm going to go ahead and guess that people who bought the Javelin and bought the Idris are definitely going to be walking the decks of their ships this year, and I would say probably flying them as well in some fashion in Arena Commander. So, of course, a little bit of speculation on my part, but I think it's reasonable speculation. Now, let's go ahead and get right into 2.3. Now, 2.3, we don't have a launch date yet for this patch. We do know that the Starfare is in hangar. Now, there is going to be another Starfare sale, and of course the price has gone up because the ship is, quote unquote, so much more than it was, than they originally thought it was going to be. So the price is getting up there. I believe it's going to be about $300 is what I've been hearing. I don't have a confirmation on that yet, so I'm just going to say about, or I'm a Canadian, so sorry, about $300. Now, there's not going to be a Gemini sale, but if I remember correctly, Ben Lesnick was saying that if you own a Starfare Gemini, when the Starfare came out, I think it was like 5-6 episodes ago when they were talking on Reverse the Verse, and I said it on the show, that they were going to make sure that people who bought a Gemini would still have like an ordinary Starfare in their hangar, so that you can at least explore the ship, and then once it becomes the Gemini, you get the Gemini anyway. So definitely, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tweet Ben later on after I'm done recording this, and just try to get a confirmation on that. So I don't know, watch Ben Lesnick's Twitter because he may confirm it later on today. So that's the Starfare. Next up is the Xeon Scout. Now, in last week's Piracy Show, when I was talking about the Xeon Scout, of course, I went and watched the videos of it later, and I was not impressed, right? Because it was doing like 225 meters a second, and I kind of went like, what? I mean, come on, man. Come on. But now apparently the speed has definitely come up. People are racing with it now, and it's much more nimble than it originally was. So, that's obviously, it's a good thing. Would have been better had it started there, but obviously the speed's coming up. So Xeon Scout, still something to keep an eye on in the future. Hopefully the weapon issue will get a little fleshed out, but yeah, obviously they are They are picking up on feedback to a certain extent and have sped the thing up. Now, I don't have a value for what it's at now, but apparently has been very much sped up. Now, also coming in 2.3 is we're going to be getting 2 engine upgrades. Now, the nature of these upgrades is still, as far as I know, an unknown. Whether it could be signature based, energy consumption based, speed based. I don't know like what kind of values we're going to be balancing off of. So what they could end up being is very much up in the air as far as I know, but we are supposedly still getting them. So it could be just like the J Star or the Cryo Star cooler and the Endo cooler, whatever the manufacturers were that we got in the last patch for the cooling systems for our ships. Now, looking forward beyond that, in 2.4, we found out that we're going to be getting, hopefully, 2 ships, 1 new ship hangar ready, and 1 new ship flight ready. So I'm going to go ahead and speculate, as I always do, and I'm going to say that the hangar ready ship is going to be the Reliant, and the flight ready ship is going to be the Starfarer. I'm going to go ahead and just say that Starfarer is going to be flight ready. Even though it seems so unlikely that a ship that big could be, I think it will be. That could be wishful thinking, and I have been wrong before when anticipating this type of stuff, but I've also been right, so who knows. Anyways, coming up beyond these 2 patches is the small mining ship is out for concept. And Ben gave us an indication that the small mining ship is probably, barring some unforeseen event, going to be the next concept ship sale. Now, along with that, there was, there was a question later on in the show dealing with what was the next profession that we were likely going to see, and the professions that they named were mining and cargo. So, obviously, to do mining, to do the profession, you need the ship. So I'm going to go ahead and speculate that the small mining ship is going to go straight from concept into production. Because if they're really thinking, that mining is going to be coming up relatively soon, that they're going to be, starting to flesh that out, they're going to need a mining vessel. And even though, it would obviously break some people's heart to hear that the Orion is not going to be the ship that's going straight into production to cover that, I think it's going to be the small mining ship. I think it's a much more reasonable tack to take. And so, I mean, in my personal opinion, I think that the small mining ship is going to end up going straight into production. Now, speaking of other things that are going into production, the final specs have gone out for the Drake Buccaneer and the Drake Dragonfly. The Drake Buccaneer, of course, being the Drake Interceptor. The Drake Dragonfly is, of course, the space motorcycle. Now, you have to keep reiterating that because somehow on the forums there's still this minority of people who believe that this is like a powered spacesuit / mecha / Iron Man suit somehow. I don't know how this got started. I mean, as soon as they pretty much announced the Drake Dragonfly, which was, going back to last summer, and Lisa Ohanian and people, brought this up, and they were like, oh no, we want to do that, that's cool, and we'll try to figure out a way to work that in. That started almost right away, that people were like, oh no, it's going to be like a mecha flying spacesuit, battlesuit type thing. And that speculation was killed. No, it's going to be a space motorcycle. I mean, Ben Lesnick literally said that it's going to be a space motorcycle. But somehow this is still carrying forward to this day. So if you're out there and you're thinking that this is like a flying spacesuit, it isn't. I mean, they even said when they were talking about it today that you're going to be crouching forward, like sort of like on a Japanese sport bike style idea, instead of rather kind of sitting all the way back like on a Harley. So yeah, it is a space motorcycle. And there's another tie-in with that a little bit later in the show as we get up towards some of the closing stuff, but I just kind of want to knock through some other things first. Now, the third Drake ship that we're finding out about today is the Herald, and the Herald is once again going back into production, but they're also making some exterior changes to it. I am very, very glad to hear that. I think that the Herald concept art has I think the shape of the cockpit in the latest versions that we've seen with that rounded nose look kind of terrible. And going all the way back to the original concept art and the whole asymmetrical, non-asymmetrical thing, like I could deal with the Herald if you just took that the asymmetrical wings off and just took that little kind of radar dish pod that's off on the one side and just kind of made a second one just the same on the other side. I would be totally fine with that. And I think that original concept art, that obviously I'm going to have up on the screen right now, that original concept art, even if you just take that wing away and you were just to like kind of mirror that little signal dish slash pod slash scoop on the one side and put it on the other, that original concept art is superior to everything that has come since. And I think that ship, it looks like it's kind of springing forward, and I think it lives up to the kind of the wording and the imagery that the ship kind of conjures up. And I think that later versions of the Herald have, I think as the Herald has gone on from concept ship to what we're seeing now, I think the Herald has degenerated in a very marked fashion, and I am not I'm not pleased with that. But it looks like they're getting some exterior changes, and Chris and Ben are signing off on the ship and watching it. Now, what the nature of these exterior changes are, do not know, but hopefully they're for the better. Now, the Carrack, of course, we talked about this last week, and we're back with it again. Now, the Carrack is, of course, getting an interior rework with Gurmuk doing it right now. Now, the Carrack, of course, or no, sorry, the Carrack is lined up to get an interior rework. Sorry. Once Gurmuk is done with the Caterpillar. Now, Gurmuk is still working on the Caterpillar, and the reason why he's still working on it is because they're having trouble integrating the ship with the Drake Dragonfly, which is, of course, also, there's 4 Drake ships in the show. I'm doing so much Drake stuff. So the Dragonfly, of course, I guess this has to do with one of the modules, and, going even further back when they were talking about like a docking module for the ship. So Drake Dragonfly as kind of like a mini carrier for these Drake Caterpillar as a mini carrier for these Dragonflies, which are also, if you remember, going to be the first snub ships to have quantum flight. That is very interesting, and that is one of the reasons why I think the Caterpillar is now a ship to keep your eye on. That, and the fact that the Caterpillar is going to be the next large ship. According to Ben, it is like official that the Caterpillar is going to be the next large ship to be delivered to us. And I have to wonder if the Caterpillar isn't going to go through the same pricing treatment as the Starfarer as the ship goes from concept and interior concept where it's at now into full production, and then they realize that maybe it has to be a little bit bigger to do what they want it to do. So given what we're finding out now about the Starfarer and the big price jump in the Starfarer, and what now that the ship has gotten so much bigger and so much more capabilities, I have to think that the Caterpillar is a ship to keep an eye on as well for this. But what I'm gonna do is the Piracy Show on Monday, I'm gonna speculate a little bit on the Caterpillar and kind of explore the idea and kind of where my head's at on that ship, because I am now starting to really pay attention to what they're saying about the Caterpillar, because this is becoming a very interesting ship in terms of piracy and just in terms of gameplay as well. It presents some interesting possibilities. But once again, that's going to be on Monday, along with a little bit more speculation on the Corvette. But anyways, that's pretty much it for today. That's all the news there is. Once again, Piracy Show will be on Monday, and I will be discussing the Caterpillar and the new Corvette. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.